Hey guys, Tammy here. And in this video, I'm going to give you 3 tips to avoid putting your children in the middle. Now, putting children in the middle is sort of a buzz phrase that the court uses to describe putting children in a loyalty bind. Okay. Courts really don't like when they do this. When we do this, it's very frowned upon. They do not want children put in these types of loyalty binds between their parents. But before we talk about that, let me remind you, if you like this content, don't forget to hit like on the video. Also subscribe to the channel so that you get notified as new videos are released. If you haven't subscribed, please do that. It helps me. I need subscribers. You need content. So it's a win-win. When we are engaging in things that cause the children to be put in a loyalty bind, we can really get ourselves in hot water with the court. And I think some of these, there's 3 things I have, and I think at least one of them is going to be pretty obvious, like, well, yeah, duh, you shouldn't do that. But I think a lot of times we don't really realize or don't intend to put them in a loyalty bind, but ultimately that's what happens, okay? The first thing I would say to you is don't ask. Don't ask them. Don't ask about the other parent's world. Don't ask about what happens. Don't ask any questions like that. Inevitably, we'll ask something, even if it's innocent. I'll have parents say, hey, what'd you guys do with the other parents this weekend? And then they'll be like, oh, we went here and we did this. And my parent's friend came with us and da-da-da-da. And then it's like, oh, what friend? Oh, well, did you like them? Well, what have you seen them before? It sort of becomes a runaway train because it's really hard to resist digging for more information. Or they'll say, oh, we went to somebody's house. Well, whose house did you go to? Oh, well, it was a party and they had a party, was there alcohol? Like it takes you down a rabbit hole where you start asking questions that maybe you didn't even intend to ask. And then suddenly you find yourself going, oh, crud, I'm not supposed to do this. Probably wasn't a good thing. I'm not supposed to do this. So you just don't ask at all. Okay. We never asked the kids anything, my stepkids, anything about, when they came back from their mothers about, what they had done or whatever. Now, again, the other flip side of this is sometimes they will volunteer information. I have a lot of people say, well, Tammy, I didn't ask them anything. They told me. Okay. And I always say, if they tell you something, it's your job to cut that off immediately. Okay. So if they say, oh, we went to the zoo with the other parent this weekend, you say, oh, that sounds like fun. What do you think we should make for dinner tonight? Okay. You get out, right? You don't invalidate their feelings. You don't act like it didn't happen. You don't downplay it. You don't act like it's a bad thing they're telling you or make them feel responsible for that in any way. Again, that would put them in a loyalty bind, right? You just acknowledge what they said. Oh, cool. Say something positive about it. Sounds like fun, whatever. And then you just move on from it. And that way you don't find yourself kind of falling down this rabbit hole and stepping into situations and things that you never intended to even talk about. The next part is don't tell, okay? So we don't ask and we don't tell. That's number 2. You don't want to tell them things about why something happened. I have a lot of people that really struggle with this in the beginning of like, well, the other parent said such and such, and so I can't do this thing. And so what do I say to the kid? And here's what you say to the kid. You always want to try to give a united front between you and the co-parent, even if it's not true, even if that's not remotely close to true. You want to present as much united front as you can. And for any of you that have teenagers, if you've lived in the house with your other parent and had a teenager, I always say teenagers will chew you up and spit you out. And so you have to be a united front with that teenager, even if you're disagreeing behind closed doors. And if you don't do that, they are going to chew you up and spit you out. And that may have been part of the contribution of, leading to the breakup. I have seen that happen more times than I care to count. But you always want to use language with the children, regardless of their age, of the fact that you're a united front. So a lot of times people say, well, what do I tell my child when they ask why? And I'm like, well, you just say, this is what your other parent and I have decided. This is what we're doing. This is what we've decided. Even if you and the other parent aren't quite in agreement, or you're going back and forth or whatever, if this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing. Or if it's not you and the other parent, it's just you. You just say, this is what because this is what I've decided and this is what we're doing. You don't owe the children an explanation. And I think that's a little bit of a struggle when we first go down this path, because for a lot of us, myself included, we've been used to having a very open relationship with my children. I would say I hid very little from them. My older son actually, my ex-husband had affairs. I've shared that before. My older son actually figured it out before I did. He was more aware of the dynamics of what was going on than I was even aware of. I mean, talk about being put in the middle. You figure out one parent's having an affair and the other parent doesn't know. That's just the quintessential, being put in the middle situation. And so I had a very open relationship with my boys, as I still do. And that was a little bit of a difficult thing for me. But you have to get to the point where you know that anything you say could potentially go over the wall to that other person. And here's the thing: when you're dealing with a narcissist, they're actually going to dig and try to pull that out of the children. So they're going to almost interrogate them. So especially if you have younger kids, you're actually protecting them by not sharing things with them and not telling them things, because if they don't know it, they can't be asked about it. If they don't know, they can't give up the goods, right? And so try to think of it as a form of protecting them rather than a form of maybe withholding from them. The third thing that I would say, and I know that I'm probably going to get a lot of, yelling at the video here as I say this, but I am a big advocate of no communication with the children when they're in the other parent's world. I don't believe I have ever seen a situation where a child likes these calls, enjoys these calls, experiences the calls positively, thrives from them. I have never seen that, honestly, in the whole time I've been doing this. I don't believe I've ever seen that situation. Most of the time, the children dread it. A lot of times they're quiet and won't even talk because they're feeling like, okay, I'm on the phone with one parent, but I'm in the other parent's house. What if that other parent hears me? What if that other parent knows what I said? What if they're upset? What if I'm acting on the phone with the parent I'm talking to? They don't like something I do or say. They feel upset. It's just a recipe for disaster, and it puts them squarely in the middle. And I honestly have almost never seen a child that likes them. They might like them in the very beginning if there isn't too much pressure on them yet from the narcissistic parent. But as soon as that pressure starts dialing up, they are going to not want to do the calls. And it's not because of you. It's not because they don't miss you or whatever. It's just because it's emotionally difficult for them. If they ask to call the other parent, let them call the other parent. I mean, if they ask the narcissistic parent if they can call you, the narcissistic person's probably going to say no to that. I mean, they're not going to agree. They're not going to let that happen. But you could let that happen from your end if they're really asking for the other parent, really, truly. And that would, and that's okay if they really want to do that. But to have this like set time frame where I have to say goodbye every night or good night every night before they go to bed and all those things, that really does put them in the middle. And honestly, that's more about your own feelings of missing them and being away from them than it really is about them. I find that most children can handle being away from the other parent for a period of time. And they know especially if they've been doing it for a little bit of time, they start to understand, okay, that we're going to go back and forth. Here's how this is going to work. And if I have a younger child, like I think around 4 or so, especially when time is kind of not quite concrete for them, a lot of times I like to put a calendar up in their room and mark it with, M and D for mom and dad, so they know what days they're overnight where, and you can just kind of draw a red line through the days as they happen so that they can kind of track, and they'll learn. My stepsons learned real quick at a very young age of what the pattern of that visitation was. Okay. So that helps build security for them when they can see what the pattern of that visitation actually is. But the communication back and forth between the two households is really problematic for them the vast majority of the time. And it can be disruptive because they're with the other parent and they're They might be doing something that they're enjoying. They're playing, they're watching TV, they're doing whatever. And honestly, they don't want to come to the phone. They don't want to be bothered. And it's not because they don't, like I said, love you or miss you. It's just that it's difficult. And emotionally, it almost like reminds them that they're away from you, right? It's like that being confronted with that reminder that you're not there, which can also make it harder for them. So I would just encourage you to kind of, I'm not saying that the calls are always bad. I know probably going to get a bunch of feedback on this. I'm not saying the calls are always bad, but most of the time, if you're dealing with a narcissistic person, I would say 99% of the time they are hard on the child more than they help. Okay, so that's just something for you to think about and consider, in my opinion. So that's my 3 tips. Don't ask, don't tell, don't do the communication, because it just puts them in the middle. If you want to learn more about this or hear more about my insight into these types of situations, you can go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. There is a video on that page that will give you additional information about my coaching programs. Also give you the option to book a call if you need more information. I would love to support you and help you navigate this journey with your narcissistic ex. See you guys next time.
We'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon. Turn